After a miserable, dreadful, lifeless, you can call it whatever you want, loss on Saturday to Texas Tech, West Virginia bounced back. They did it in a big way Monday night against Oklahoma State. We'll get into comparing both those games, where it leaves West Virginia with 3 games to play, and much more on this episode of the Blue Gold Sports Podcast. What's going on, everybody? Happy Tuesday. It was a win West Virginia had to have in the biggest way possible, and they had it. Saturday was must win, but yesterday it was make or break. If you lose yesterday, your season's over NCAA Tournament hope-wise. If you win yesterday, which the Mountaineers did by 18, you keep your season alive, and that is certainly what they did. So let's just get into that. Let's compare Saturday to yesterday. Biggest thing, defense. West Virginia allowed 67 points yesterday, allowed 78 on Saturday. Mountaineers, they forced 18 turnovers last night, leading to 28 points. Only forced 12 turnovers on Saturday, leading to 7 points. And defensive-wise, against Texas Tech made 6 of their 14 threes, 43%, 47% from the field. Oklahoma State, on the other hand, 2 of 19 from 3, just a tad under 39% from the field. So if you're West Virginia, you got to be happy about that. Bob Huggins, after the game, called this the best defensive effort of the season about Oklahoma State's game, and Mountaineers did it in a big way, and they also got a lot of help offensively, but they also were able to kind of play a complete 40-minute game. It seems like there's been times this year they've played in stretches. They haven't played start to finish. Last night against Oklahoma State, it really felt like this team played from start to finish for really the first time all year. And another thing is rebounds. Excuse me. Texas Tech out-rebounded West Virginia by 11, and they had more second-chance points. West Virginia had 10 more second-chance points than Oklahoma State last night, only rebounded them by 2, but it seemed like West Virginia got pivotal offensive rebounds. They just did what they had to do, and they beat a team that, truthfully, they're probably better than right now. Oklahoma State's been dealing with some injuries. West Virginia, they gotta hopefully propel this going forward, because they got three big ones left in the regular season. So, biggest takeaway for me last night is Trey Mitchell. The offense has to run through him. I get Eric Stevenson can go for 25, 30 any given night, but Stevenson can do that on his own. The offense has to run through Trey Mitchell. And yes, they double the post, but if you're Bob Huggins, you got to get Trey Mitchell the ball and let him create, because he can shoot, he can dribble, he can pass it. And when Trey's locked in like he was last night, he's a top 15 player in this conference. And we see the potential. We've seen the highs. Coming into last night, Trey was averaging just over 5 points, I believe, over his last 5 games, 5.8, almost 6 points over his last 5 games. And then he explodes for a season high 22 last night. So big night for him. Another good night for Eric Stevenson. Stevenson had 23 following up his 27 against Texas Tech. So another big day for Stevenson. You just hope that he keeps that together. You can't have these games for him where he scores 4, 5, 6 points. He's got to get 12 plus if you really want to have a chance to win all of your games. And matter of fact, like, you got to win. Transitioning into that, you're at a place now, if you're West Virginia, where you don't, obviously, going into Allen Fieldhouse and going into Hilton against Kansas and Iowa State, respectively, this weekend is going to be tough. It's not easy to do that and win. Obviously, West Virginia has not won in Lawrence. They have won and had success in Hilton. But you can't have these games where you just get blown out by 50. You're at a place now where every game matters, every point matters even more. And 3 games from now, you're going to have to, it's win or go home. Obviously, March is not guaranteed yet. West Virginia is still sitting at, I believe, 16 wins. So they're going to need 2 more, in my opinion, to really safely be in the tournament. And I don't think they get one this weekend. I really don't. I think it's going to be really tough to split. Maybe if it was reversed and you get the long week for Iowa State, you have a better shot. But I truthfully think that Kansas might be the best team in the country, and they could legitimately go back to back, and winning at their place on a Saturday afternoon is going to be really tough. And then turning that around 48 hours later and going to Ames, playing in that building is also really, really difficult. After that, you got Kansas State at home. Got to win that. That's a must win, just like last night was. And then hopefully you steal one in the Big 12 tournament. I think right now West Virginia would be slotted to face Texas Tech, team you just lost to, but a team you beat on the road. And Texas Tech's hot. They're hot right now. They're a half game back. They played tonight against Oklahoma in Norman. So Oklahoma wins. West Virginia will be the current 8th team in the Big 12, and Texas Tech will be 9th, and it will be sole position of 8th for the Mountaineers. But moving on to bracketology talk. Things are good for the Mountaineers. A lot better than yesterday, that's for sure. Mountaineers moved up from last 4 into the last 4 buys for Joe Lenardi on ESPN. He has the Mountaineers in the East region as a 12 seed facing UConn in the first round. A good old Big East matchup right there. And then facing the winner of Gonzaga and Iona in the second round. So not really much to talk about matchups here. Obviously, it's just a matter of how West Virginia is projected. Bart Tovic, it's an analytical site similar to KenPom in that realm. 70.8, so about a 71% chance for the Mountaineers to make it to the NCAA tournament, and they have them as an average 11 seed. So it seems like if West Virginia gets in, it's going to be in that 10, 11, 12 seed range. It just depends on how many games they win down the stretch. I want to talk a little bit about comparing West Virginia's resume to a resume from last year. So a team that got in last year that made it to the Sweet 16 was Michigan. Michigan last year, they were 17-14 overall, 11-9 in the Big Ten. They lost their first game in the Big Ten tournament, and they went 5-10 in Quad 1 games and had one Quad 3 loss. And on top of that, we're ranked 34th in the net on Selection Sunday. Now you might ask, why am I bringing up Michigan, right? Well, West Virginia right now, 16-12. Obviously, West Virginia's conference record is not as good, but the Big 10 and Big 12, like Big 12 this year compared to most conferences in the last 5 years, is absurd. But the big thing I want to look at here is Quad 1 wins. West Virginia has 5. They're 5-11. So they've played one more Quad 1 game, and they have as many Quad 1 wins as Michigan did last year on their resume. West Virginia does not have a Quad 3 loss. And on top of that, West Virginia moved up 6 spots to 26th in the net. And I believe that is 8 spots higher than where Michigan was on Selection Sunday last year. Michigan was an 11 seed. They did not have to play in the first 4 in Dayton, and they made it to the Sweet 16. My point being is that West Virginia's resume is good. 5 Quad 1 wins is really, really good. And you're only going to have more opportunities for that, because your last 3 games of the year are Quad 1 games. And then depending on who you draw in the Big 12 tournament, then that's another opportunity for a possible Quad 1, probably Quad 2 game. Just looking at the net right now, you have to be ranked 51 through 50, top 50 in the net to be a Quad 1 game on a neutral site. So right now, Oklahoma is 61st in the net. Texas Tech is 54th in the net. So Tech could sneak into a Quad 1 game. They could sneak up there if they move up 4 more spots. And if you play Texas Tech in the first round of the Big 12 tournament, that is a Quad 1 game, another opportunity for a win, and a Quad 1 win at that. So my point being here is that there's precedent for where West Virginia is at. Like, there's precedent if West Virginia gets one more win, say it's a Quad 1 win, say they win one more game down the stretch, one of their last 3, and then lose in the first round of the Big 12 tournament. Right? So that means West Virginia would be 6-14 in quad one games. And that's not really that much of a problem, in my opinion. I just think that there's all these benchmarks that you feel like you have to get to if you're West Virginia. And there's all these what ifs, what if we get to 17? What if we get to 18? What if we get to 19? But at the end of the day, 2 wins and you're in, and 1 more win and you're really in the conversation. And I think for a team that started Big 12 play the way they did, for a team that felt dead at the beginning. Like, if we're being completely honest, they looked dead. And then here you are, top 30 in the net, top 25 KenPom. You've played like almost as many quad one games as anyone else. You've played 18 quad one games. That is tied for 4th most in the country. And if you want to look at who's ahead of them, well, Iowa State and Kansas have played 21. Texas Tech's played 20. TCU's played 19. Texas has played 18. West Virginia's played 18. Baylor's played 17. Oklahoma's played 17. So Kansas State's played 15. Oklahoma State has played 15. That's the whole conference, like, right there. And so there's recognition that you're playing some of the best teams in the country. There's recognition that your schedule, if you're West Virginia, is really hard. West Virginia's strength of schedule right now is 4th by RPI standards, 5th by net standards. The 5th toughest schedule in the country by net rankings, which is the ranking system that all these committees and people use to determine who's in the tournament. So that might have sounded a little ranty. Didn't really mean it to be ranty, but my whole point being is this. If you're West Virginia, you have a shot. Win 1 more game, you're in the conversation. Win 2 more games, you're in. And honestly, if one of those wins, like if you win at Ames, if you win somehow, some way, pull it out, take a magic hat and pull a trick out of it, a rabbit out of it, whatever the analogy is there in Allen Fieldhouse, it's going to be hard to deny a team that goes on the road and beats a top 3 team right now and a 1 seed this late in the season, in my opinion, especially when you're on the bubble like that. So win a road game. Like if you go 1-1 this weekend and then lose to Kansas State, that's almost better in my opinion than going 0-2 this weekend and your 1 win being Kansas State. So the opportunity is there, the path is there. It's just a matter of if they get it done. And how will they get it done is they have to play defense and they have to go to their best players. And skill-wise, Trey Mitchell is their best player. He's not their most consistent player, but offense has to go through Mitchell, has to go through Trey, because the way this offense looks with Trey versus without Trey is completely different. Trey also has to be smart. There's been games where he's picked up 2 quick fouls and he's had to go sit. And then you're shuffling, then you're putting James at the 4 sometimes with Jimmy on the floor, and it just gets messy. Like when you have all those big bodies in there, when you have Pat on the floor. No offense to him, he's not a scorer. When you have James on the floor, James isn't the biggest scorer. Jimmy Bell isn't the biggest scorer. Like, you've got to keep Trey Mitchell on the floor at all costs. And sometimes you might have to give up a layup so you don't take an easy foul. But that is the biggest thing. And the tournament's about here, guys. And if you're West Virginia, it's now or never. So Mountaineers have a big shot on Saturday at Allen Fieldhouse against Kansas. Then they go Monday at Ames at Iowa State. And they come back Saturday, March 4th, finish it off senior night A lot of people going to be honored that night, including Emma Matthews, probably the biggest senior name in this class. And then you go to Kansas City, and anything can happen in Kansas City. They've made the championship game a few times. They've lost in the first round a couple times. So they want if last year's team could win a game in Kansas City, this year's team should be able to win a game in Kansas City. But we will just have to wait and see. So that is it for this episode of the Blue Gold Sports Podcast. If you made it this far, I do appreciate you listening. Find more about us at bluegoldsports.com. Read what we have up there and follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and like us on Facebook. So my name is Wesley Shoemaker. Give me a follow if you want at Wesley Shoe on Twitter. Thank you for listening, and this is the Blue Gold Sports Podcast.